The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank our appropriator witnesses for being here today. This is not a criticism of the work that you're doing. I understand why we are where we are. But doggone it, it's hard when we get accused of not responding appropriately to an emergent situation when the administration and its federal agencies continue to put their heads in the sand. And what I am talking about is the fact that no one, and I realize there are now several hundred cases in the United States, but to the best of my understanding, only 2 of those cases were actually contracted elsewhere and brought home. Those 2 cases that were contracted here were close personal contact. The virus is not yet in our mosquito population. When that happens, when that day occurs, truly the disaster that everyone is talking about will be at hand. So the question is how best to prevent that disaster with the dollars that we have to spend. And for my money, the best way to prevent that disaster would be for the president, for the federal agencies, to use the bully pulpit that they have. This is the only bully pulpit that I have. I'm not a committee chairman. I'm simply a humble backbencher toiling in the vineyards on the Rules Committee. But to the extent that I have a pulpit, let me suggest that no one go and get this virus and bring it home. And it's really as simple as that. I recognize that will not stop the transfer of this virus indefinitely, but Dr. Fauci told Chris Smith's Foreign Affairs Committee in February of 2016, that he needed about a year or a little bit longer to get to a vaccine. Okay, if we've got a clock ticking where there is a finite solution for this problem, why don't we do everything in our power to delay the virus coming to this country? And right now, if you call the State Department and say, is there any kind of travel restriction? And they say no, check with the CDC. So you check with the CDC, and they have 3 levels of concern: level 1, level 2, level 3. Right now, Brazil and Central America are at a level 2. Level 3 is what happened in Western Africa in 2014 during the Ebola crisis. 2014, a level 3 travel restriction is obviously a very serious situation. But this is a very serious situation. Why not accelerate this to a level 3 travel restriction, not just an advisory to wear insect repellent when you're in Central America or Brazil? Why not elevate this to a level 3 travel restriction until such time as we can get better control of things? There are other aspects where, again, the administration says you're not treating this like an emergency with the funding, but doggone it, they're not treating it like an emergency with what the Food and Drug Administration is doing with approving and evaluating the release of sterile male mosquitoes, which is a demonstrated method for disrupting the transmission of this virus. We talk about vector control. We just had a big debate on insecticides, but you know what? This mosquito, it's a house pet. It doesn't go outside. It doesn't live in your storm drain. You can't spray aerially. It will do much better if you interrupt its life cycle with sterile male mosquitoes introduced into the population. And I'm sorry, I'm not worried about the downstream effects on subsequent generations of mosquitoes or those that depend upon the mosquito for a food source. I'm just not worried about that right now because we have babies being born with a tragic condition called microcephaly. So if the administration is calling on us to treat this seriously, my question back to them is, why will you not acknowledge that this is a serious crisis, put those travel restrictions on? You talk to the CDC, you talk to the State Department, and literally they're pointing past each other. Well, you got to talk to them. You got to talk to them. No one is talking about the elephant in the room, which is the fact that we have a raging wildfire of disease south of our border, but it will be here if we don't do something to interrupt it. Now, I was criticized because I went on a television program back home and I said, someone asked me, what about the Olympics? I said, you want my advice? Don't go. Well, that's a big deal to say don't go to the Olympics. Major League Baseball interrupted some of its schedule. It said they're not going to go play games in areas where the Zika virus is, out of respect for the, yes, none of their players are going to be carrying pregnancies, but they could, at risk, bring the virus home to their families. So they said, okay, our players don't have to go. Now you've got the Harvard School from the Faculty of Medicine, the Faculty of Law, the University of Ottawa, don't go to the Olympics. I mean, people are beginning to recognize that this is a potential problem that we're visiting upon ourselves. Yes, maybe the funding is an emergency. I would like the administration to behave as if it's an emergency. I would like the FDA to behave as if it's an emergency with vector control, with approving laboratory-developed tests that could rapidly detect the presence of this virus in someone who might have been exposed and now who might be pregnant. It would be very helpful for them to know. And then finally, we're going to have to step up and just answer the question, and this is probably better posed to the World Health Organization, but goodness knows our CDC is integrally involved with them. Someone is going to have to address the question, what to do about the Olympics. It makes no sense to send 500,000 people into an area and then bring them all back and let them disseminate the virus. I'd be happy to hear our witnesses' thoughts on any of these aspects.
I was going to defer